Today's demonstration will be on sourdough breads by Chef Craig Shorman. So for sourdough bread, the starter is the most important part. We're going to get equal parts, 2 ounces of flour, 2 ounces of water, and we're going to mix them up inside of a ball canning jar. This is what it would look like. I'm going to cover it with a piece of paper towel and the lid. And we're going to place it in a warm place. Meanwhile, 24 hours later, we can see that the yeast is forming and we have the bubbles. We're going to do it all over again. Mixing up our flour and our water. I'm going to pour it in with the current starter. You can see the difference. Put the lid back on. We have a time lapse of what our yeast is going to look like as it's bubbling in the starter. It's about 30 minutes after feeding it on day number 2. We need to do this for 5 days before we can start the bread. Once you have a starter, as long as you feed it, it can last forever. For the dough, we're going to be adding in a 1/2 cup of starter, 1 cup of lukewarm water, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and we're going to whisk that up vigorously. Next, what we do is we get 2 3/4 cups of bread flour. You can also use all-purpose flour, and we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. We're going to mix that in. We'll dump that in with our liquid mixture. With a spatula, I'm going to move this around and try to form this into a ball. You could also use your hand. I like to use a combination of both as I go through. It's nice to start with the spatula at the beginning. We don't need to knead the dough as far as working it with our hands like a traditional bread. That is the difference between sourdough and regular bread. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add some olive oil in the bottom of the pan. We're going to let do the bulk fermentation overnight for 12 to 18 hours. By putting the olive oil in the bottom with the dough, what's going to happen is as the dough slowly ferments overnight, what's going to happen is it's slippery on the bottom and it'll be able to kind of rise up and it won't have any problems sticking. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap because we don't want air to get in. Air is the enemy of dough as it's fermenting or rising. And then what we're going to do after we put the plastic wrap on and we make sure it's sealed around is we're going to get a dish towel, clean dish towel. We're going to place it over the top and let that sit for the next 12 to 18 hours. Meanwhile, the next morning, we're going to take the dough What I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully fold it over and turn it 90 degrees and fold it over. And what we're doing is lightly working the dough and stretching it, trying to form it into a ball or boule shape. We're getting this ready for our proofing as we work with our dough and basically get it into the shape that we're looking for. We're trying not to work it like we would with a normal piece of dough where you're really trying to build up gluten. We're just basically trying to get it mainly into the shape that we're doing. Now what I'm going to do is I have a basket and I'm going to place a clean dish towel and I'm going to coat it very well with flour. And what we're going to do is we're going to help use this as a form for our dough to rise. Um, so what I do is I want to make sure that I get the shape that I like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the seam side up and the pretty side for the dough down, and we're going to place that into the basket with the towel and the flour. And by doing this, as it sits there, it's going to rise and it'll help give us that nice round boule shape or round shape that we're looking for. Again, we're going to cover this up with plastic wrap, and we are going to place a towel over the top of that. And we're going to let that sit for approximately 1.5 to 2.5 hours so that we can let it rise and hopefully have it double in size. After proofing, we're going to take off the towel and we're going to take off the plastic wrap. And we want to see that we've essentially doubled in size. We carefully take that off so we don't let any air out or pop it. I'm going to sprinkle some flour on the bottom of the loaf, and then I'm going to place flour onto the pan. We're placing this onto the pan on an upside down sheet pan because I have a hot pan in the 400-degree oven, and we want to slide the dough from the sheet pan carefully so we don't knock the air out of it onto the hot pan. And the reason that we preheat the pan is it's going to help get us a nice crusty bottom on the loaf. We want to make sure that we have the shape that we're looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to score the bread on top. As you can see, I'm taking the knife and I'm going to slice across, and we want to go all the way across the bread about a 1/2 inch in, and this is going to allow the bread to rise and spread, and it'll give it a nice appearance. We're going to take the dough and put it on the hot pan, and we're going to carefully slide that over. I'm going to be getting a large bowl and placing it over the dough. And what this is going to do is it's going to help get us a nice dark crust. The steam from the bread is going to stay in there. We'll take this off about a 1/2 hour into the cooking process. So we bake it covered for 30 minutes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take that off. As we pull this off, you can see the bread already is starting having nice color. So as we place that in, we're going to bake that off for approximately 20 to 25 more minutes. So we've baked it off completely, and here's the finished product. The nice thing about the sourdough bread is that during pandemic times, we don't have any yeast available in the stores, and this gives you the ability to make some amazing bread. And as you can see here, it came out great. The important thing is you should let it completely cool before you cut into it, if you can. As I slice into the loaf, we'll look for the characteristics, a nice crunchy outside crust, and you can see the holes in the inside from the fermentation and the rising. This came out to be an amazing loaf. I really look forward to making more sourdough bread. I'm Chef Craig Sherman at T.C. Williams High School Culinary Arts Program. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at chefcraig@gmail.com. Happy baking!